When I woke up to find my Tesla vandalized by our HOA president, Linda Thompson, I had absolutely no idea it would ultimately lead to me owning half the neighborhood. But as I sit here now, watching her being escorted out of her house in handcuffs, I can't help but wonder, did she ever realize she picked a fight with the wrong millionaire? Welcome to my channel. Comment below where you're watching from. Honestly, I never thought I'd be standing in my own driveway at 7 a.m., my coffee mug shattered at my feet, just staring at long, deep scratches gouged across my Tesla's hood. The early morning sun only made the damage look worse, like angry claw marks stretching viciously from headlight to windshield. My hands were actually shaking as I pulled out my phone to record the damage. Just yesterday, everything had been perfectly normal. I'd come home from another long day at my tech company, parked in my usual spot, and decided to add a small "Save the Bees" bumper sticker to my car. My daughter Emma had given it to me. She's really passionate about saving the planet. The sticker wasn't even flashy, just a simple black and yellow design featuring a cute little bee. I truly thought it was harmless. That's precisely when I heard the familiar click-clack of heels on the pavement. Sure enough, Linda Thompson, our HOA president, was power-walking toward me, dressed impeccably in her perfectly pressed pastel pantsuit and clutching her infamous red folder brimming with violation notices. Behind her, I noticed my neighbor, David Miller, watering his plants. He gave me a knowing, almost sympathetic look. He'd been on the receiving end of Linda's rigid rules just last month when she demanded he remove his traditional Chinese New Year decorations 2 days early. "Good morning, Mr. Harrison." Linda's voice was sugary sweet, yet her eyes were cold as ice while she surveyed my car. "I see you've made some modifications to your vehicle without proper HOA approval." With practiced ease, she flipped open her folder with perfectly manicured fingers, producing a fresh violation notice. "It's just a bumper sticker, Linda," I said, trying my best to keep my voice level. "My daughter gave it to me. Section 7, Paragraph 3 of our bylaws clearly states that all exterior modifications must be approved by the committee," she recited, flashing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We have standards to maintain, Mr. Harrison. Property values to protect. I'm sure you understand." Oh, I understood all right. I understood that Linda had somehow turned our once peaceful neighborhood into her personal fiefdom, ruling with an iron fist, cleverly hidden behind pastel cardigans and unnervingly fake smiles. Just last week, for instance, she'd forced elderly Mr. Henderson to remove his beloved garden gnomes, claiming they were nothing but yucking, tacky lawn ornaments. And in the week before that, she'd relentlessly harassed Sophia Rossi until she tore out her beautiful vegetable garden simply because it wasn't on the approved plants list. "I'll take it under advisement," I replied curtly, bending down to pick up the pieces of my broken coffee mug. Linda's smile tightened noticeably as she placed the violation notice squarely under my windshield wiper. "You have 48 hours to remove the unauthorized modification," she announced, turning sharply on her heel. "Otherwise, we'll unfortunately have to discuss this further at the next board meeting." What Linda didn't know, however, was that I'd installed high-definition security cameras just last month after hearing about some car break-ins nearby. As soon as she was out of sight, I pulled up the footage on my phone. And there she was, plain as day, at 6:30 a.m., deliberately dragging her keys across my car's hood, muttering something about teaching people to follow the rules. Just then, I looked up to see David hurrying over, phone in hand. "I got it too," he whispered urgently, showing me his own doorbell camera footage. "And believe me, this isn't the first time. I've been collecting evidence for weeks. She's been targeting anyone who even slightly questions her rules." My mind raced furiously as I watched the footage again. Linda clearly had no idea who she was messing with. Tomorrow I was scheduled to sign the final papers selling my tech company for a cool $50 million. I'd intentionally kept quiet about it, preferring to live modestly in this middle-class neighborhood because I genuinely liked the simplicity. But now, watching Linda strut down the street to undoubtedly harass Sophia about her wind chimes, I realized something absolutely had to change. "Hey, David," I said quietly, "how much do you happen to know about HOA voting rights and property ownership, specifically in this neighborhood?" He raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "I'm a real estate lawyer. Why do you ask?" A small smile played on my lips as I picked up Linda's violation notice and carefully folded it into my pocket. "Well, David, I think it's high time we looked into some interesting investment opportunities right here in Oakwood Estates. But first," I added, "I need to make a few calls regarding certain properties that might just be coming up for sale very soon." As I headed inside to double-check my security camera's cloud storage, I heard Linda's sharp voice carrying across the street. "Mrs. Rossi, those wind chimes are not on the approved outdoor accessories list." I paused at my door, watching Sophia's shoulders slump in defeat. Little did Linda know, her perfectly controlled little world was about to be turned completely upside down. I just had to be smart about it. After all, the best revenge often requires patience, and thankfully, I had something much better than sheer anger on my side. I had a plan. The very next morning, I was sipping my coffee when David Miller knocked frantically on my door, clutching his phone with visibly shaking hands. "You need to see this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I invited him in, noticing how he kept glancing nervously over his shoulder, as if expecting someone to be watching. It turned out David's doorbell camera had caught everything, not just the previous night's vandalism, but weeks of Linda's late-night visits to my car. The footage clearly showed her, clad in her signature pink robe, keys firmly in hand, muttering darkly about teaching that troublemaker a lesson, while she deliberately dragged those keys across my Tesla's paintwork. Disturbingly, each video was worse than the last. She'd clearly been escalating, getting bolder and more brazen with every single attack. "And there's more," David said grimly, pulling out a thick folder. "She's been doing this kind of thing to everyone who dares to stand up to her." He spread dozens of photos across my kitchen table. Mrs. Davis's prized flower beds ripped up shortly after she questioned the new landscaping rules. The Johnson family's basketball hoop mysteriously broken right after they opposed the absurd no sports equipment policy. Even David's own garden gnomes had vanished without a trace after he voted against Linda's extravagant pool renovation project. While David recounted these incidents, I pulled up my banking app. The notifications still felt surreal. $50 million sitting right there after the successful sale of my cybersecurity startup. I'd kept it quiet, continuing to drive my 3-year-old Tesla and live in my modest house. But now, seeing Linda's smug, self-satisfied face in those damning videos, something just clicked inside my mind. "Watch this," I told David, pulling up the county property records on my laptop. "Look closely at who actually owns the mortgage company that holds most of the loans in our neighborhood." My fingers flew across the keyboard as I unraveled the complex web of shell companies Linda had meticulously set up. It became horrifyingly clear. She wasn't just terrorizing us with petty HOA rules. She was actively profiting from every forced sale, every desperate refinancing, every single homeowner driven to the brink by her ridiculous fines. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. It was another HOA violation notice. Unauthorized vehicle modifications and deteriorating appearance. The fine? $500, due within 7 days. And below it, insultingly, was a photo of my keyed car, presented as evidence of my supposed negligent vehicle maintenance. I called my lawyer right then and there, putting him on speaker as he patiently explained my legal options. David's eyes got wider and wider with each passing second. Linda had certainly been careful, methodically building her little empire of fear, one violation notice at a time. But she'd made one massive, colossal mistake. She fundamentally thought I was just another resident she could easily bully into submission. "David," I said firmly, after hanging up, "would you be willing to share those videos with a judge?" He nodded eagerly, then froze as we heard a car door slam outside. Through my window, we watched Linda marching purposefully up and down the street, pink clipboard in hand, diligently writing up more violations. She paused ominously in front of my house, her face twisting into a contemptuous sneer as she spotted my car. That's when I noticed something truly odd. She was wearing the exact same pink robe from the nighttime security footage. My stomach dropped as the chilling realization hit me. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. She wanted me to know it was her. "You know, I thought I was just buying a nice house in a quiet neighborhood," I murmured to David, watching Linda brazenly photograph my damaged car. "But I think I just stumbled upon a much, much better investment opportunity." I immediately pulled up the real estate listings for our neighborhood and, without hesitation, clicked buy on the first available house. Then another, and another. David stared at my screen, utterly dumbfounded. What are you doing?" I just smiled, forwarding the purchase confirmations straight to my lawyer. "Linda wants to play games with property values? Fine. Let's see how she handles a new neighbor with very deep pockets." As if on cue, my phone buzzed yet again. Surprise, surprise, another violation notice. This time, it was for unauthorized surveillance equipment. She'd obviously spotted David's doorbell camera, but this notice felt different. At the bottom, in bold red letters, it read, "Emergency, HOA board meeting tomorrow night. Attendance mandatory." Looking at that imperious notice, I couldn't help but wonder how many other people had Linda managed to break? And more importantly, how many more houses could I possibly buy before tomorrow night's crucial meeting? David left shortly after, a copy of all the video evidence safely backed up to my secure cloud storage. Through my window, I watched Linda, still diligently making her rounds, completely oblivious to the fact that her meticulously controlled little kingdom was about to face its biggest challenge yet. I opened my laptop again, immediately searching for more properties for sale right here in Oakwood Estates. One thing was absolutely certain: tomorrow night's meeting was going to be very interesting indeed. I sat in my home office, staring intently at the property map of Oakwood Estates spread across my desk. Red circles now marked the 6 houses I'd quietly, strategically bought through different company names over the past month. Linda, blissfully unaware, had no idea that while she was busily writing me up for my eyesore of a Tesla, I was steadily becoming one of the single biggest property owners in the entire neighborhood. Just the previous night, I had received a text from David showing Linda, accompanied by her board crony, Karen, taking more photos of my car. Both of them were shaking their heads disapprovingly and pointing directly at my "Save the Bees" bumper sticker. Honestly, they looked like a couple of kids plotting to steal cookies from the cookie jar. Except these particular cookies had already cost me a staggering $12,000 in paint damage. My phone buzzed, a confirmation from my lawyer. All the necessary paperwork was ready. Perfect timing, really, because tonight was the monthly HOA meeting, the very meeting where Linda undoubtedly planned to publicly fine me for my damaged vehicle, the same vehicle she herself had damaged. The irony would have been almost funny if it wasn't so infuriating. Walking into the community center later that evening, I immediately noticed Linda had rearranged the chairs into a deliberate half-circle, positioning herself on a slightly raised platform at the front, like some kind of small-town judge presiding over her court. She barely even looked up when I walked in, simply continuing to shuffle her papers with that infuriatingly smug smile I'd grown to utterly despise. Other neighbors gradually filtered in, including David, who gave me a subtle but encouraging thumbs up. "First order of business," Linda announced, her voice practically dripping with fake sweetness. "We need to address the growing problem of vehicle deterioration within our community. Mr. Harrison," she said, fixing her gaze on me, "your Tesla has unfortunately become quite an eyesore with its extensive scratches and unauthorized modifications." I remained silent, patiently watching her dig her own grave deeper and deeper. She pulled up photos on the projector, dramatically zooming in on the very scratches she herself had inflicted. "As per our bylaws," she continued smoothly, "we will be issuing a $500 fine, which I must add will repeat weekly until the situation is appropriately remedied." That was my cue. I stood up calmly, just as my lawyer walked in, right on schedule. "Actually, Linda," I interjected clearly, "I'd like to call for a vote on that." The room instantly fell so quiet, you could practically hear the air conditioning humming. "Excuse me," Linda's face began to redden. "You don't have the authority to—" "As the owner of 478 Maple Drive, 223 Oak Lane, 891 Pine Street, 654 Birch Road, 432 Cedar Avenue, and 767 Elm Court," my lawyer read out calmly but firmly, "my client now controls 30% of the total voting rights in this association." You could have heard a pin drop, the color completely drained from Linda's face. Several board members immediately started whispering amongst themselves. Karen actually dropped her pen. But Linda wasn't quite done yet. She quickly composed herself, straightening her jacket. "Well, that's very interesting timing, Mr. Harrison. But as it happens," she pressed on, "the board has already drafted emergency rules requiring all vehicle modifications, including bumper stickers naturally, to be pre-approved by our new Appearance Committee." She gestured vaguely towards her daughter, Jessica, who I hadn't even noticed sitting quietly in the corner. "Jessica will be heading this important committee." "Point of order," I interrupted again, pulling out my own copy of the official HOA bylaws. "Emergency rules specifically require 72 hours notice to all homeowners. Where exactly is the documentation proving that notice was given?" Linda's smug smile finally faltered. We sent emails." "Oh, really? To which addresses?" I countered smoothly. "Because I've personally checked with 15 different neighbors, none of whom received any such notice." I glanced pointedly at David, who nodded in confirmation. The meeting predictably devolved into chaos after that. Linda tried desperately to adjourn early, but I immediately called for an official vote of no confidence in her leadership. We didn't win that vote. Not yet, anyway. She'd stacked the board far too well for that. But the unmistakable look of sheer panic in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. She knew deep down that this was only the beginning. Walking to my car afterward, I heard quick footsteps behind me. It was Jessica, Linda's daughter, looking nervous, but surprisingly determined. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" she hissed, her voice low. "But my mom's been running this neighborhood for 15 years. You have no idea what she's capable of." I simply smiled as I got into my still-scratched Tesla. "That's where you're wrong, Jessica. I know exactly what she's capable of. The real question is," I paused for effect, "does she know what I'm capable of?" As I drove home, I pulled up the latest email from my private investigator on my phone's screen reader. The subject line read, "Thompson Financial Holdings, ownership records found." Linda's perfect little kingdom was about to face a revolution she never ever saw coming. One morning, while walking my dog, I saw David running toward me, completely out of breath. "You absolutely have to see this," he gasped, pulling up his phone. The screen showed horrifying footage of Linda screaming furiously at Sophia Rossi, my elderly neighbor, who was openly weeping as Linda's hired landscapers, clearly just hired thugs, ripped out her prized rose garden, the very roses Sophia had lovingly planted in memory of her late husband. My blood boiled instantly, but I forced myself to keep my voice steady as I asked David to send me the video immediately. Back home, I opened my laptop and started digging deeper. As it turned out, David wasn't the only one with stories. My inbox quickly filled with disturbing security footage forwarded from other terrified neighbors, Linda relentlessly harassing poor Mr. Henderson about his harmless garden gnomes until he finally gave up and moved out. Linda threatening Megan Carter, a single mum, over her kids' innocent chalk drawings on the sidewalk. Linda fining the Smith family because their son's necessary wheelchair ramp was deemed not aesthetically pleasing. The pattern was undeniable and sickening. I immediately called an emergency meeting, not an HOA meeting, but a neighbors' meeting at my house that evening. 20 people showed up, each armed with their own Linda horror story. Sophia arrived bearing her famous empanadas, her hands still visibly dirty from trying desperately to salvage what little remained of her precious roses. Mr. Henderson joined us via video chat from his son's house, the place he'd been forced to move to after Linda's relentless, crippling fines effectively bankrupted him. "She's not just mean," Megan Carter said, bouncing her youngest child on her knee, her voice trembling slightly. "She's actively breaking laws, but nobody here can afford to fight her in court." That's when I shared my plan. I pulled up the property records on my large TV screen, clearly showing how I'd quietly but systematically bought up 6 houses within the neighborhood. David's eyes went wide as he fully grasped what I was doing. But the real shockwave went through the room when Sophia's daughter, who happened to be a paralegal, pulled up an old county map. "Look at this," she exclaimed, pointing to the original property lines delineated decades ago. "Linda's been enforcing rules on land that isn't even technically part of the official HOA jurisdiction." We all huddled around the screen, a buzz of excitement building as we collectively realized we finally had actual, solid legal grounds to fight back. Just then, my security system pinged. An alert. Linda's daughter, Jessica, had just been appointed to the HOA board that very morning. Clearly, they thought they were consolidating power, fortifying their position. They had no clue I was already 3 steps ahead. While everyone was intensely focused on the map, I received a crucial email confirming my purchase of 3 more properties. Even better, my ongoing investigation into their shady mortgage company had finally revealed something huge, something potentially devastating that would wipe those smug smiles right off Linda and Jessica's faces for good. David helped me quickly set up a secure, encrypted website where neighbors could anonymously upload any evidence they had of Linda's harassment and abuse of power. Megan's teenage son, a budding computer whiz, showed us how to efficiently organize everything by date and type of violation. Mr. Henderson started calling his old neighbors, and soon we had amassed nearly a decade's worth of meticulously documented abuse. As our determined group worked late into the night, Sophia's salvaged roses sat patiently in buckets of water on my kitchen counter. We were absolutely going to replant them, all of them. But first, we had to definitively end Linda's reign of terror. I hadn't yet told anyone about the bombshell discovery that I now secretly owned the very mortgage company holding the notes on many of their homes, including Linda's. That particular card would be played at precisely the right, most impactful moment. Jessica and Linda were undoubtedly planning something big. We could all feel it. They'd called yet another, emergency HOA meeting for the following night, ostensibly to address neighborhood deterioration. Little did they suspect we'd be addressing some deterioration of our own, the rapid deterioration of their power. Looking around my living room at all these neighbors who had quickly become friends, united against a common enemy, I realized something profound. This wasn't just about my keyed Tesla anymore. This was about standing up, together, against bullies who foolishly believed their money and perceived power somehow put them above the law. As everyone finally headed home, Sophia paused at my door. "You know they'll try to destroy you too, right?" she asked quietly, her eyes filled with concern. I just smiled, thinking about the figurative bomb I was planning to drop tomorrow. Let them try, Sophia. Linda truly had no idea what was coming. My phone buzzed again. Another property purchase confirmed. In just a few short hours, Linda Thompson would learn the hard way. Sometimes, the quietest neighbor is actually the most dangerous one to cross. I walked into the community center that fateful evening with my laptop tucked securely under my arm, feeling an almost eerie sense of calm. Linda sat predictably enthroned in her special chair at the front, wearing those ostentatious fake pearls and flashing that sickeningly false smile she always employed right before ruining someone's day. The room was packed to the rafters. She'd made absolutely certain every single homeowner knew this was a mandatory emergency meeting concerning community standards. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They hadn't since David helped me strategically set up the 5 hidden cameras discreetly placed around the room. We needed to capture every single second of what was about to unfold. Linda's daughter, Jessica, stood poised by the projector, likely ready to showcase unflattering pictures of my deteriorating Tesla. "Before we begin," I announced firmly, standing up before Linda could even launch into her usual self-aggrandizing speech, "I have some rather interesting security footage I'd like to share with everyone." Confused murmurs rippled through the room, growing louder as I confidently plugged my laptop into the projector, bypassing Jessica and her prepared presentation entirely. Linda's face instantly flushed crimson. "This meeting has a specific agenda, Mr. Harrison. You can't just—" "Actually, Linda, I can," I stated calmly, clicking play. "You see, as of this morning, I now own 35% of the properties in this neighborhood." The screen immediately lit up with crystal clear, undeniable footage of Linda herself keying my car at precisely 6:43 a.m. 3 weeks prior. Then, another clip played from 2 weeks ago showing the same thing. Then another. Jessica lunged impulsively for the laptop, but David swiftly blocked her path. "Don't worry," I reassured the gasping crowd. "I have copies, lots of copies, including the ones I already sent to the police department this morning." Linda leaped up abruptly, her expensive designer purse tumbling unceremoniously to the floor. "He's lying. I would never. This is clearly fake. Doctored." Her voice cracked noticeably as the very next video clip showed her maliciously scratching Sophia Rossi's car as well. "Remember," I continued, turning my attention back to the crowd, "when you told Mrs. Miller her garage door was painted the wrong shade of white?" I clicked to another slide. "Well, here are the official property records showing you approved the exact same color for your friend Barbara just last year. And look here," I added, pointing to another document. "Here's your daughter Jessica's newly formed company getting all the subsequent painting contracts awarded by the HOA." The room erupted. Mr. Henderson stood up, pointing his cane directly at Linda. She did the same thing to my garden gnomes, said they were unapproved lawn decorations, but Barbara's ridiculous plastic flamingos were perfectly fine. I held up my hand for quiet. Oh, but it gets even better. Linda, I said, locking eyes with her, remember that little-known mortgage company that conveniently bought your house last month when you refinanced? The one that gave you such a fantastic interest rate? I pulled a thick folder from my briefcase. I own it. I've owned it for weeks now, just like I own the shell company that's been quietly buying up properties all over Oakwood Estates. Jessica screamed, "You can't do this. We control this neighborhood. My mother has run this HOA for 15 years. Had run it," I corrected her sharply, pulling up the next damning document on the screen. Turns out, the State Attorney General's office is suddenly very interested in the disturbing pattern of selective enforcement and financial irregularities I've meticulously documented. They're especially curious about where all those exorbitant fines and special assessment fees actually went. I turned back to the stunned audience. Did you know our HOA fees mysteriously went up 60% last year? Yet there's absolutely no record of any significant community improvements being made. Suddenly, Linda made a desperate run toward the computer, knocking over chairs in her frenzy. "I won't let you ruin everything I've built," she shrieked, grabbing blindly for the laptop. She tripped over the power cord, sending the machine crashing violently to the floor. It didn't matter. The crucial footage was still playing on the main projector screen, now graphically showing her systematically destroying Sophia's cherished rose garden under the cover of midnight. A stunned silence fell over the room as Linda scrambled awkwardly to her feet, mascara streaking dramatically down her tear-stained face. "You don't understand," she sobbed brokenly. "I did everything for this community. These people, they needed someone strong to maintain standards. Without me, this place would look like a real neighborhood." Sophia Rossi finished calmly, standing up and holding her phone aloft. "By the way, Linda, you're currently live on Facebook. My cousin's a reporter down at Channel 5 News. She's finding this story absolutely fascinating." Just then, flashing blue and red lights pulsed through the community center windows. Linda's face went deathly pale as she realized multiple police cars were pulling up right outside. Jessica made a frantic dash for the back door, but David's wife, Jenny, was already there, calmly holding up her own phone, displaying even more incriminating videos she'd captured. "Oh," I added, watching Linda sink defeatedly into her chair, "I almost forgot the best part. Remember when you insisted my little Save the Bees bumper sticker was single-handedly destroying property values?" I pulled up the final slide. A detailed real estate market analysis clearly showing how property values in Oakwood Estates had actually dropped by 15% under her leadership compared to all surrounding neighborhoods. Turns out, Linda, the only thing truly hurting property values around here was you. The police officers walked in just as Linda made one last, futile grab for the scattered evidence. But it was far too late. Everything, every video, every financial record, every testimony was already meticulously backed up, documented, and safely in the hands of the authorities. As they led a handcuffed Linda and Jessica away, I walked outside and calmly stuck a brand new bumper sticker onto my freshly repaired Tesla. This one simply read, "Karma comes full circle." The morning originally scheduled for the final HOA meeting actually started with a literal bang. Apparently, in a fit of rage before her arrest, Linda had thrown a rock through my front window, accompanied by a crudely written note that simply read, "Leave Oakwood Estates or else." Perfect. That final act of petty vandalism was exactly the kind of evidence needed to help solidify the case against her and ensure she faced appropriate consequences. The next few months were like watching a line of dominoes fall, one after the other. The State Attorney General's office launched a full-scale investigation into the HOA's finances and practices under Linda's tenure. Facing potential charges themselves, the remaining board members started singing like canaries, revealing every shady deal, every backroom agreement, and every instance of intimidation Linda had orchestrated over her 15-year reign. Her husband's prestigious law firm, already reeling from the negative publicity and my recent acquisition, quickly distanced itself, leaving Linda legally isolated. But the real victory wasn't just seeing Linda face justice. It was witnessing the transformation of the neighborhood itself. Drawing on my tech background, I helped develop a simple neighborhood app where residents could propose initiatives, discuss issues openly, and most importantly, vote on community decisions directly and transparently. The era of autocratic rule was officially over. Slowly but surely, the families Linda had unfairly pushed out started moving back, drawn by the promise of a fair and welcoming community, and aided by the reduced-rate housing options I established within the properties I now owned. Mr. Henderson's garden gnome collection, once banished, grew bigger and more whimsical than ever, becoming a quirky neighborhood landmark. Sophia Rossi's replanted native plant garden blossomed into a vibrant butterfly sanctuary that local schools now visit for educational field trips. David Miller even started a popular weekend farmers market in the community center parking lot, fostering a new sense of local connection. Fittingly, Mrs. Johnson, whose minivan Linda had vandalized and who had almost lost her house due to Linda's bogus fines, was overwhelmingly elected as our new community board president. Last week, I received a letter bearing a prison postmark. It was from Linda, still defiant, demanding I remove my Save the Bees Wabiti sticker because it was, in her warped view, still against HOA regulations. I framed the letter and hung it proudly in my office, right next to my recently awarded community service plaque. My Tesla, now fully repaired, sports a whole collection of bumper stickers, each one representing a family that has returned home, a small victory won, or a positive change embraced by our revitalized community. Sometimes, late at night, I sit on my porch and just watch. I see kids riding their bikes freely past houses adorned with rainbow-colored doors, past yards bursting with vegetable gardens and dotted with solar panels, all the beautiful, diverse, and sustainable things Linda used to arbitrarily ban. And those property values she was so obsessively worried about? They've actually gone up by 30% since her departure, largely thanks to Oakwood Estates' newfound reputation as arguably the most inclusive and forward-thinking community in the entire state. People occasionally ask if I regret spending so much time, energy, and money just to take down one power-hungry HOA president. But then I watch Mr. Henderson patiently teaching a group of neighborhood kids how to plant tomatoes in the communal garden, right in the very spot where Linda's overly manicured, approved roses used to be. And I know, without a shadow of a doubt, it was worth every single cent. Because real community isn't built on rigid rules, arbitrary fines, and fear. It's built on bringing people together, fostering understanding, and celebrating diversity. And that little Save the Bees sticker that inadvertently started it all, it's still there on my bumper. A little scratched, perhaps, but defiantly unbowed, just like our community. Disclaimer: the information presented in this story is for informational and entertainment purposes only. HOA rules, regulations, and governing laws vary significantly by state and local community. This story serves as a powerful reminder that unchecked power, even on a small scale like a neighborhood HOA, can lead to significant abuse and harm. However, it also shows that standing up to bullies, even when it seems daunting, is crucial. By working together, gathering evidence, understanding the rules and loopholes, and sometimes leveraging unexpected resources, ordinary people can challenge injustice and reclaim their communities. It highlights the importance of transparency, accountability, and the strength found in collective action. Never underestimate the impact one person or a united group can have when fighting for what's right. What did you think of this story? Have you ever had a difficult HOA experience? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more content.